This is one of those stories that's really built on a paradox. Think about it. A brand new nation, founded on this deep-seated fear of a professional army, goes and creates the very thing it was afraid of. This is the story of how West Point came to be. It's a story about forging leaders, yeah, but also about forging a nation.
Okay, so let's really dig into that puzzle. The United States starts with this deep, deep suspicion of professional armies. They saw them as the first step towards tyranny. But the Revolutionary War was a tough lesson. It proved that just having passion and patriotism, well, that's not enough to win battles. So here's the big question. If you're a republic that's terrified of a professional officer class, how in the world do you go about creating one from scratch?
So, you've got these two things clashing, right? On one hand, you have that revolutionary spirit, this absolute fear of creating a military elite, the same kind of aristocracy they just fought a war to get away from in Europe. But on the other hand, there's the cold, hard reality of war. The Continental Army was frankly desperate. They had to rely on foreign experts, guys like Baron von Steuben, to teach them discipline, and Thaddeus Kosciuszko for engineering. It became painfully clear really fast that they needed their own experts.
Now, this idea for a national military academy, it didn't just pop up overnight. It was debated for years. You had heavy hitters like Washington and Hamilton pushing for it, but man, it was a really tough sell in the new republic. And then finally, on March 16, 1802, the act gets signed into law. And you won't believe who signed it. President Thomas Jefferson, a guy who for a long time was completely against the whole idea. Kinda ironic, right?
Okay, so they have a law, they have an academy. But as you can imagine, just creating a school on paper is one thing. Making it actually work is a whole different ballgame. And those early years of West Point, they were anything but orderly. It was, well, less of a prestigious academy and more of a total mess, a chaotic, barely defined experiment.
And when I say chaotic, I mean it. The lack of standards was just staggering. Get this, cadets could be as young as 10 years old or as old as 37. There was no set curriculum. How long were you there? Well, maybe 6 months, maybe 6 years. It was completely inconsistent. It was basically a school in name only, and as you can guess, morale was in the basement.
Let me give you a number that says it all. 89. That's it. That's the total number of officers who had graduated by the time the War of 1812 kicked off. And that war, it turned into a brutal, brutal wake-up call. It just screamed from the rooftops how unprepared the nation's military leadership really was.
So yeah, this was a national crisis. It created this undeniable urgency. The experiment had failed, plain and simple. The country absolutely needed a real system for creating disciplined professional officers. It was time for a massive overhaul, and lucky for them, the right man for the job was just about to step onto the stage.
And this is where the story of West Point really begins. Because the academy we think of today, it's pretty much the story of one man's vision. His name was Sylvanus Thayer, and he's the guy who would, almost single-handedly, forge the academy's identity from the ground up. What's fascinating is that Thayer actually graduated from that same chaotic early version of West Point. He knew firsthand how broken it was. After making a name for himself in the War of 1812, he was sent to Europe to study the best engineering schools on the continent. He came back in 1817 as the new superintendent, and he wasn't just showing up for a job, he was armed with a rock-solid plan to bring order, discipline, and real academic standards to West Point.
His approach was so revolutionary, we still call it the Thayer method. And it basically flipped the whole idea of education on its head. It's funny, we talk about the flipped classroom today like it's some new idea. Thayer was doing it in the 1800s. His system was all about self-study and daily prep. He used small class sizes to make sure every single cadet was held accountable. The responsibility for learning, it was on them. And believe it or not, they still use this method today.
He basically built the modern academy on 4 huge pillars. First up, rigorous academics, with a real standardized curriculum. Second, strict military discipline to build order and character. Third, he made civil engineering the foundation of everything, because that's what a growing nation desperately needed. And fourth, and this was a huge deal back then, advancement was based purely on merit, not on your family name, not on who you knew. This was the blueprint for the future.
And the impact of this? It was massive. Under Thayer's leadership, West Point became the #1 engineering school in America. Its graduates, they didn't just go off to lead armies. They literally built the nation. We're talking about the railways, the bridges, the harbors, the roads, all the stuff that connected a huge, sprawling country. They were the ones designing it.
So, Thayer's system was perfect for creating that classic 19th century officer-engineer.
But, the world doesn't stand still. As the world changed, the whole idea of what makes a great leader had to change with it. So let's fast forward about 100 years because another legendary figure is about to show up and shake things up for a new, way more complex era.
And that figure was, of course, Douglas MacArthur. He comes back from World War I, a decorated hero, and takes over as superintendent in 1919. He'd seen modern warfare up close, and he knew that the challenges of the 20th century were going to demand a totally different kind of leader. So he set out to build one.
So think of it this way. If Thayer created that hyper-disciplined engineer-soldier, MacArthur's vision was for the well-rounded, scholar-athlete leader. He believed a modern officer needed more than just engineering skills and discipline. They needed a broad education, they needed to be physically tough, and they needed a rock-solid moral compass. For him, it was all about developing the whole person.
And he didn't just talk about it, he made it happen with 3 huge reforms. First, he totally shook up the curriculum, adding way more emphasis on things like history, economics, and the humanities. Second, and this is huge, he established the cadet-run honor system in 1922. And third, he famously declared every cadet an athlete, which led to this massive intramural sports program designed to build teamwork and a competitive spirit.
This quote just nails MacArthur's philosophy. He truly believed that what happened on the athletic field, that competition, that teamwork, it wasn't just a game. He saw it as direct preparation for the challenges they'd face on a real battlefield. It was all about forging character by pushing through adversity. So, when you look at the whole story, from the absolute chaos of its founding, through Thayer's foundational reforms, and then MacArthur's modernizing vision, you see West Point developing this really unique and powerful identity. And it's all captured in one simple, but really evocative phrase.
The long gray line. You've probably heard it. It's more than just a cool nickname. The phrase really refers to this unbroken chain of graduates stretching all the way back to 1802. It's this idea of a line of leaders linked across generations, all bound together by a shared, incredibly demanding experience and a commitment to the same core values.
And right at the very heart of those values is the Academy's famous motto, duty, honor, country. Duty, that's your commitment to get the job done. Honor, that's your own internal compass telling you to always do the right thing. And country, well, that's about your ultimate loyalty to the nation and everything it stands for.
And the glue that holds all of this together is the Cadet Honor Code, the one established under MacArthur. What's so powerful about it is how simple and direct it is. A cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. That's it. It's simple, it's absolute, and it's a non-negotiable standard for your character.
So in the end, the history of West Point is really more than just the story of a school, isn't it? It's really a 200-year-long search for an answer to one single massive question. From engineering skill to athletic grit to moral clarity, it all boils down to this. In the complicated world we live in today, what does it really take to build a leader of character?